Good morning, one and all. Welcome to the Thematic Panel 5, titled Culture, Society and Religion in China. I request every one of you to please be seated. Now I request the Honorable Chair and the panelists to kindly proceed to the dais. The session will be chaired by Professor Sabaree Mitra, who is a professor, Center for Chinese and Southeast Asian Studies, School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and Honorary Fellow, Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. The speakers for this session are Abhinav Kumar, Doctoral Scholar, Center for Chinese and Southeast Asian Studies, School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, who will be presenting his paper on integration of traditional cultural elements into China's core socialist values in the new era. We will also have joining us online Dr. Kaustav Padmapati, who is Assistant Professor Senior Scale, School of Liberal Studies and Media, University of Petroleum and Energy Studies, Dehradun. Dr. Padmapati will be presenting on China's critical relationship with LGBTQIA plus movement in the post-COVID era. The next speaker is Gargi Chaturvedi, who is also a doctoral scholar, Center for Chinese and Southeast Asian Studies, School of Language, Literature and Culture Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She'll be presenting on Red Redux, Wan Hua Shishin, and Red Culture Discourse in the New Era. Now, I would request the Honorable Chair to please take over. Ma'am, if you may, please. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I am happy to be here for two particular reasons. One is that this time I'm not the convener, so therefore I'm enjoying the conference. Secondly, this particular session, it so happens that two of the panelists are doctoral scholars from my own center, and the other, Kaustav, has been working in the area of LGBTQ plus for some time, and I've heard his presentation in the past. So without taking much more time, I will start with the first panelist, Abhinav Kumar. I would request all of you to first state your title and confine yourself to 12 minutes with the possibility of a little bit of thanks.
Thank you, Uday and Chair. Good morning to one and all present here. I am Abhinav Kumar and will be presenting my topic, integration of traditional cultural elements into China's core socialist values in new era. So I will start with my observations made during the 19th Party Congress in Beijing and its suburbs from 2017 to 2018. Chinese culture and values are closely related, both theoretically and practically. During a national meeting on publicity and theoretical work in 2013, Xi Jinping, I quote here, "We, Chinese, should make the past serve the present and future things serve China, and adopt Chinese traditional culture and foreign things after a thorough scientific review of both." And this debate is similar to when I will discuss later. So this debate was earlier during the 100 days of reform, during the late Qing period. Now, in May 2013, the Research Center for Theories of Socialism with Chinese Characteristics under the Ministry of Education published a detailed piece in the People's Daily, outlining each of the 12 CSVs and their definitions. Also under the supervision of Ministry of Propaganda, Ministry of Education Party Group, the CSVs are for Chinese citizens, whether they are mainland Chinese, business community, or Hong Kong, or overseas Chinese. The term excellent traditional culture, excellent traditional Chinese culture in the new era, and during the Mao, it was advanced advanced Chinese culture incorporated traditional culture and its sources, mainly written texts, and highlighted how the CPC practices its authority to shape moral values and social conduct all over China according to the model which are first used in the discourse of CPC. Here, one of the main characteristics of CSV is that they not only incorporate themselves with new technologies, but also with new organizational strategies and way of thinking. The first quote here by Liang Qichao, and the founding members of the founding members of the CPC, Chen Tuxiu and the Li Taochao, were all highly influenced by this reformist and national thinker. And here he quoted about the citizen. What does the citizen mean in terms of Chinese culture? Another quote by Chang Lihua, and it was just after Xi Jinping took the office in 2013, states traditional cultural values that influence the psyche of Chinese people are harmony, benevolence, courtesy, wisdom, honesty, and filial piety, and so on. And the third point, which is very interesting to find out, that CSVs are the soul of cultural soft power, and it is going to define how it is going to be the Chinese cultural soft power, and which shows Chineseness as well as to boost cultural confidence within Chinese citizen. And it is also moral and ideological foundation for socialist China through all society to guide morality. And it comprises a set of moral principles summarized by the central authority, that is the CPC. And it is necessary too, as Xi Jinping added, CSV is an important way of ensuring smooth operation of social system and safeguarding social order. And all policies regarding the economy, politics, culture, and society must be worked out to benefit the cultivation of CSVs, and the law should protect, promote their buildings. And the scope of my paper is limited to the three levels, dividing CSVs into three levels, that is national, social, and individual. And objective, examine and in interrogating the CSVs in order to understand how the CPC is expanding its appeal to resonate with the people over whom it wishes to exert its dominance. And it is a part of census building initiative originating with the CPC and targeted at Chinese citizens. And the hypothesis here, the cultivation and practice of CSVs can be better understood and promoted by studying their historical and cultural roots and aligning them with the modern social trends. And the research question here, what is the relationship between the traditional Chinese culture and core socialist values? Methodology and sources. Here I am focusing on content and discourse analysis to examine the relationship between TCC and CSVs. And here the major project by the Ministry of Propaganda, which is Xi Jinping, Lun Shahui, Heshin Jiachi, Tishi. So this is the compilation of speeches by the Xi Jinping whenever he used to refer CSVs before he came to power and after he came to power in the office. And now, the theoretical aspect, that is, I say it, the theoretical work is in progress. The Sinicization of Marxism from Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, and during Deng Xiaoping period, seeking truth from the fact, and which developed into spiritual civilization. Now in the new era, values in every aspect of life and for doctrine to be made a spiritual pursuit for the public. And the first point, which is very common, that China has a 5,000-year long history, but Primarily, it is more written works of ancient scholars and court historians. And China has a very strong tradition of recording history and events. And the next point, that is integration of Marxism and China's specific reality and quote and unquote best of traditional culture. That is perhaps enough to say about the selectiveness of TCC by the CPC. And the Chinese culture is an essential socialist element that provides an intellectual foundation to infuse into it Marxism. And the background of the socialist culture and CSVs, I would like to say elements are in the pot. As Professor Than Chung described Chinese traditional culture and civilization as a permanent melting pot that would never fail into disuse. And the changing time have only been able to change the content inside the pot, but not the pot itself. And now, the first period, that is Mao Zedong period. So I am looking at into three phases from starting from Mao Zedong, then Deng Xiaoping, and now in the new era. When we look at the Deng Xiaoping period, Mao Zedong period, so from Confucius to Sun Yat-sen, and the selective approach towards traditional culture and the famous Yan'an spirit to produce advanced culture, that is, these cultures are for being into the service of, or to mobilize culture, literature, arts serve the people, first and foremost for the workers, peasants, and soldiers. And the Deng Xiaoping period, seeking truth from the fact. And interestingly, the Shi Shi Qiu Shi, the forward compound, they have linked directly to the Han Shu, the book of Han biography by Liu De. So they are drawing these forward compounds from the ancient texts or the ancient philosophy. And then during the reform and opening up, the positive relationship between China's economic development and the moral health was accomplished through the binary framework of two civilizations. One, material civilization, and second, the spiritual civilization. And the concept of core socialist values of core value system of socialism was first advocated during the 6th plenary session of the 16th CPC Central Committee in 2006, signifying Hu Jintao's concept of harmonious society. And later in the 18th Party Congress, the 12 core socialist values were identified and divided into 3 levels. Yeah. So the first picture at the national, left side, these 2 pictures are divided into 3 levels. At the national level, possibly taking leading roles in all our values. All other values are prosperity, democracy, civility, and harmony. And at the social level, containing the basic features of socialism with Chinese characteristics are freedom, equality, justice, and rule of law. And at the individual level, comprehending the code of ethics, moral guidance for Chinese people, and integral foundation of social relationship are patriotism, dedication, and integration on friendliness. And the right side, this is the book of elementary Chinese, for elementary small kids. So in the middle of that, there are 12 sets of core socialist values. So it is not visible much, but in the middle of that, there are CSVs. And that is linked to my second part, that is dissemination of CSVs. The first part, from philosophy to common sense and catch them young, school and university students. After the symposium commemorating a centenary of Rabindranath Tagore's visit to China at Shenzhen University, organized by the Center for Indian Studies, I took few interviews of Chinese students and about the fundamental questions that how they see traditional culture. They said it is there in their textbook. And an interesting fact is that it is easy to communicate with them through Xi Jinping's speeches and reference to historical facts and moral lines, which is ideal to be followed by the ideal citizen. And the third point, which is based on whose harmonious society concept, and the concept comprised in the CSV's framework, and that is built upon the program for improving civil morality, which was published in 2001. And it has also few common keywords like patriotism, observation of law, courtesy, honesty, solidarity, friendship, so and so forth. And the fourth and fifth point, that is forging and building public consensus and syncretization of Marxism into practice. Yeah. So in this part, CSVs are a part of Chinese dream. According to Ying Miao in an article titled Romanticizing the Past, CSVs and the China Dream as Legitimizing Strategies. She has analyzed the visualizing our values, poster collections, and China Dream Child campaign as a case study to show how CSVs is disseminated at the ground level. It is also highlighted that from 2001 onward, key Confucian concepts have been included in the movement for the construction of moral education for Chinese citizens. It has been argued that CSV campaign is a shift in propaganda focus with an overarching attempt to emphasize the socio-political superstructure over the economic base in order to build civic consensus. And unlike predecessors in the state socialist era, the main difference is that these campaigns do not attempt to mobilize viewers into action at all, but focus on creating an idealized, harmonious, and caring past. So this is the characteristics of CSV in new era. Now, the traditional cultural elements into the CSVs.
Can I ask you to wrap up in the next 2 minutes?
Yes, ma'am. Chinese traditional cultural values have not only played a significant role in forming some of these CSVs, but have also provided a strong philosophical and cultural foundation for their development. Traditional values have been regarded as precious spiritual treasures and are still action in date. Many Chinese leaders, including Xi Jinping, have often quoted ancient Chinese teachings and proverbs to illustrate the principle of various aspects of social governance. And first one is, I was talking about the modernization of China in the crisis during 100 days of reform. But here, he added scientific approach towards these sources. And the first, regarding the patriotism, he included, the CSV has incorporated cultural figures, icons like UFA of Sung dynasty, Cheng Kung of the Ming dynasty when he recovered Taiwan, and Lin Zexu during the Qing dynasty. So these were cultural icons to be promoted during the CSVs, and goal for achieving national rejuvenation and common prosperity, but also helps in galvanizing popular supports for China's claim of sovereignty in the fact of territorial dispute. And again, the harmony, it has also derived from the book of documents, Sangshu. And then we have Mangzi and rule of law, and dedication. So it has also used reference of Chuzi, the founder of Neo-Confucianism during the Sung dynasty, and a dedicated person. Again, a foolish mountain moves the mountain. This four-word compound used by Deng Xiaoping, again used by the Xi Jinping 2 times and more than. first in 2014, and the speech at the first session of the 13th National Party Congress in 2018. And this picture, the right side, yes. Yes. This picture also shows the Confucian and the core socialist value campaign in the poster. And in the picture, we have Xiao Kang She Hui, related to Xiao Kang She Hui, and which derives from the filial piety. There is a child helping his parents and his parents helping his grandparents. And the emphasis on filial piety as a traditional culture values is juxtaposed against the CPC's wariness of Chinese Western values and cultural hegemony. And there are critics also for prosperity and rule of law, which also based on Fa, Shu, and Shi. And then my findings, it is that there is a continuous process which combines the relationship between material and spiritual civilization. And the traditional culture and core socialist values are not just formally linked, but share intertwined connotation. And this is vital for advanced socialist culture and guide the direction of socialist development with the Chinese characteristics. Thank you. I will stop here.
Okay, I think the next presentation should be from Kaustav. Hello, Kaustav, welcome. So
Thank you so much.
You have about, I said 12 minutes, so can you please stick
Sure.
to the time? Thank you.
Sure. I'm just planning to share my PPT. Okay. Thank you so much, the chair, and also the team for making this arrangement at giving me this opportunity, because this is my second, conference, but unfortunately I could not come because of the distance and some commitments. So you can see that the topic that I'll be speaking today is China's critical relationship with LGBTQ plus movement in the post-COVID era. I think it is very important topic to discuss, because we when we this kind of forum, we always focus on more on military, more on always strategic and other economic sort of things, but we hardly we talk about the reality, the amount of extreme homophobia that exists in this particular country, and which is getting worse, and how this country could play an important international role if it does not have any scope for the other alternative sexuality and other gender minorities. So that's why I have specifically, and those who are familiar with my work, mostly I have worked on Taiwan. So this time I have specifically collected this particular topic to more like in future to do like a comparative study. So I would like to start with in the introductions that in 26 September 2023, Ministry of Foreign Affairs in CPC, they released the Global Community of Shared Future, China's proposal and actions. And there they outline countries' new ambitious visions for building a better world. In the document, the PRC wished to create an inclusive, clean, and beautiful world that enjoys lasting peace, common security, and common prosperity. However, in reality, President Xi Jinping's new visions for building a better world is far away from being inclusive. This vision reflects China's aspirations for a more harmonious global order, but it notably lacks any mention of LGBTQ rights or protection of sexual minorities. And China's global positioning under Xi Jinping emphasized concepts like common security, common prosperity, aiming to foster global partnership and multilateral cooperations. However, domestically, the government policies and attitude towards the minority communities tells a different story. So, originally, have never explicitly protected from discriminations in this particular country, and the government has always shown a very ambivalent and fickle attitude towards this community. Unfortunately, the Constitution of People Republic of China provides for equality. However, there's no explicit mention of sexual orientations or gender identity. The LGBTQ issues are still taboo in this society, and the community faces a lot of discriminations in terms of ostracizations, unemployment, even jail. So when we look at the post-COVID era, it has become more tightened under the President Xi Jinping's concepts. And the main idea is it a Western value, or in his concept of national regenerations, that the society has more tighter control. So surprisingly, in the post-COVID era, the country is turning more homophobic to protect call traditional Chinese values in the face of globalizing pressure, as well as focus on the social harmony and state control. Uh, so I'll go further. So President Xi Jinping's new visions for building a better world is far away from being inclusive. While this vision reflects China's aspiration for a more harmonious global order, it notably lacks any mention of LGBTQ rights. Now, if I like to, obviously this paper is still in the progress, and I'm looking forward more discussions on it. And one of the main, like my limitation is that I am not, I cannot read and write Mandarin or any, so definitely data collection was quite challenging. But however, the main objectives of this particular paper is to the study explore critically the transition of queer understanding in China, which are considerably shaped by social, political, cultural, and historical factors. The equal right of LGBTQI plus Chinese have been one of the most urgent social problems that I needing to be solved. The study will also focus on the state of LGBTQ rights in China and how the country is struggling to protect the Chinese values in approach to the queer questions. And the last one, it also explored the potential benefits of granting LGBTQ rights as a soft power strategy, taking an example from Taiwan experience that constraints to attaining such status. When we look at the reality, of course, like there's a huge section of LGBTQ population in the China, and historically, I already mentioned they are always marginalized. Deep-rooted cultural beliefs emphasizing traditional family structure and importance of lineage contribute to the ongoing stigma. Political and social limitations further restricts advocacy of rights and public gathering that promote LGBTQ rights, creating an environment of caution and fear for many community members. Unfortunately, that's the safe spaces. Here, I like to stress that the safe spaces are constantly shrinking in this country in the post-COVID era. And we'd hardly find any serious national and political discourse on LGBTQ rights. And even in 2023, no specific ministry or the government has given any responsibility for issuing relating to sexual orientations and gender identity. So LGBTQ activism, it is not something like that, like 2000s, early 2000s, and before that has a lot of visibility, a lot of activism, significant numbers of NGOs also appeared, a lot of representations in the popular media. They also have pride movement. And even in early 1990s, the term Tongzi got popular in China to identify homosexual relations. So a lot of work has been done on the Tongzi identity if we look at the literature. I'm skipping the literature review because of the time constraint, but there are a lot of understanding on Tongzi movement. In early 21st century, Tongji became the most widely accepted term of self-identifications by the LGBTQ community of China. The phrase was adopted by the queer community to rise above censorship in China that surrounds queer identity. Now the crackdown. So the crackdown started gradually from when Xi Jinping came to power. 3 months after the election of Xi Jinping, officials were arrested on the Beijing Queer Film Festival, which is one of the most renowned queer festivals. So these are the spaces where basically LGBTQ community got representation, like film festivals, discussions groups. So they started with that. 2 months later, the Beijing Independent Film Festival was obstructed by Chinese authority and it got cancelled. And it was like on 11th year of that year. Then 2020, Shanghai Pride was forced to end. So Shanghai Pride was one of the biggest pride in the world. And it is also stopped from 2020 onwards. So this shift, that the positive shift that happened in the period from 1990 to 2000 onwards, it started shrinking. The President Xi Jinping set a tone for a more assertive, traditional, and self-reliant China, supported by growing populations and traditional Chinese values, which has resulted into constant narrowing of the gay spaces. Under the leadership of Xi Jinping, a more targeted, systematic, and official attempts are undergone to disturb the lives of the. I'll give more example on that. So the activities included like media censorships, police bullying of people identifying it on arrest of queer activists, shutting down of queer social media sites, crackdown on LGBTQ students, and there are many more examples. I'll come to some specific now. So if we look at the civil society organizations, in May 2023, the LGBT Center in Beijing suddenly made this statement: we are very regretfully announced, due to forces beyond our control, the Beijing LGBT Center will stop operating today. That center was one of the prominent center providing LGBT support, counseling, and one of the safest spaces. But however, that was also, stopped its activities. It represented China's LGBTQ movement in political, economic. It was like the center was one of the faces, like the prominent faces. Then looking at the social media crackdown, WeChat, I think many of you are familiar with WeChat, and so many online communities used to exist run by the LGBTQ activists, activists. So those specific accounts were targeted, and many of this WeChat removed those platforms, and WeChat in June 2021 deleted most official accounts of LGBTQI organizations run by university students. And and another one, mostly the people, the students they were associated are from Fudan University, Tingshui University, one of the most prominent universities.
Kaustav, can you
Then,
wind up in the
yeah.
next 2 minutes, please?
Okay, sure. I'll go, then I have to go a little faster, just 3 minutes. And Grinder is another one that is quite prominent, its activities. Another one, when we talk about, this is the main debate I have to focus on, the more control on the group started with the, ban on CC men. And CC men's are basically like, according to the narrations, effeminate man. All of you are familiar with K-pop culture, the man who wear makeup, effeminate. And so these kind of men are not actually accurate for the Chinese society. And they were banned in 2021 from all television appearance in the televisions. And it is regarding redefining a new terms of masculinity. So I have done a little bit of study more on, so China focuses on hegemonic masculinity, and so you can see the pictures of the CC men, and they are basically referred to as the girly guns by Chinese culture authorities. Men often, effeminate. So there's no space, and for the Chinese authority, they are not ideal for the Chinese values. So they are, so if we look at, they are like mostly, if we do refer to the Cornell study of hegemony of masculinity, they are basically marginalized masculinity who are easy targets in any society. So according to Peng Jiomi, professors of sexuology, CC culture cannot become a country's mainstream culture. This individual who embodies CC culture cannot be idealized. So one of the main reasons for rejecting, because they are not fit for the Chinese value or Chinese system. I think, yeah. So the main debate is that whether homosexuality is the debate we often come across in India. Is it a Western concept or is it? But here, like I'm not an historian, but I did little bit of study, and different dynasties have references of alternative sexuality. There are kings who have both male and female companions. There are also historical records also talks about Nanfang, and the Ming dynasty also saw the rise of the male dancers who basically like male who. So there are a lot of cultural and historical references. I'll not go into that because it's not a historical paper. So that is the main debate is always about the homosexuality in the Chinese society.
Kaustav,
And
please
the
wind up in a minute because the third speaker will have less time.
Sure. So it is basically like any other society, the Chinese society is also patriarchal in nature. And like any other Asian society, it is the marriage pressure is too much. And in my paper, I have written about how the one-child policy also promoted a lot of forceful marriages. So so the discussion is all about, I will come to the conclusion that the CCP under the leadership of President Xi Jinping has fundamentally censored homosexuality in public spaces and mass media. Because the China's strict authoritarian system requires CPC to maintain severe control over the society. And as I said, they are basically not fit for the Xi Jinping's idea of masculinity. And he has his vision has more strong men rather than the CC men. So with basically I've come to conclusion. Also, I had more important arguments. The path ahead of LGBT community, activists, academics, professionals, and remains rocky and uncertain. I don't see much changes because we can see the rise of overall homophobia in major countries, both Russia, China, and I don't see much progress. And sorry, I could not make the comparison part with Taiwan. Thank you so much, and I'd like to hear your comments. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kaustav. On to you, Gargi. Please try and stick to 12 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. I would first like to thank the organizers and the chair for giving me this opportunity to present my paper, which is titled Red Redux, Wanhua Cixin and Red Culture Discourse in the New Era. In recent years, Wanhua Cixin, or cultural self-confidence, has been asserting its prominence in China's policy making as one of the central pillars of China's confidence doctrine, officially termed as the Four Matters of Confidence. Cultural confidence refers to the full affirmation of the value of China's culture and faith in its vitality. Two key components of this cultural confidence doctrine are excellent traditional Chinese culture and red culture. While the former has garnered extensive attention in China's contemporary cultural dialogue, as already explored by my co-panelist Abhinav, the latter has primarily been a subject of internal study by Chinese scholarship. When one hears the term red culture, it immediately evokes the imagery and cultural representations of the Mao era. However, this presentation seeks to examine the strategic repackaging of red culture and its role in enabling the party to connect with its revolutionary heritage and connect the aspirations for a culturally confident China and the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. The study assesses how the meanings attached to red culture have transformed over time to serve distinct ideological purposes in the Mao and the post-Mao periods. The methodology also involves a comparative approach to highlight the continuity and divergence between Mao-era revolutionary culture and today's red culture. By analyzing primary sources such as official speeches, policy documents, and the discourse on red culture in the Chinese media and its evaluation by Chinese scholarship, the study identifies how red culture is repackaged to meet contemporary political and economic needs. Through this lens, the study also seeks to demonstrate that red culture functions not as a revival of the Mao-era cultural representations, but as a malleable tool for ideological adaptability and historical continuity in the context of today's China. Here are some of the sources that I have relied upon, which encompass both official government online platforms and online public platforms, which are, as they are called, the red websites, where public intellectuals regularly analyze the contemporary relevance of red culture. I believe these sources are indispensable if one is interested in further exploring the subject. But before delving into red culture, I would like to first reflect on what confidence in culture means to the party and why does it matter so much at this point in time. So formally, it was the confidence doctrine was introduced at the 18th National Congress by Hu Jintao, which had only 3 elements, which was confidence in the path, theory, and system, which were deemed necessary to propel China towards a bright and a confident future. But in 2016, another element, the 4th element, which was confidence in culture, was added to this concoction, which signaled that the party is not only seeking people's confidence in the vitality of its policies, governance, and theoretical underpinnings, but also in its identity as both the faithful successor of China's revolutionary legacy, as well as the rightful inheritor and a willing carrier of China's 5,000-year-old traditional Chinese culture and ancient philosophical foundations. And besides that, last year in November, Xi Jinping Thought on Culture was also introduced as a key component to the socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era. And it was stressed that without cultural self-confidence and prosperity, there can be no great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Thus, foregrounding cultural central role in achieving national objectives. Now, due to the paucity of time and in the given framework of this paper, I refrain from discussing on the contents of Xi Jinping thought, but you can have a look at the key elements to this thought mentioned on this slide. With such a prominent status being accorded to culture, this leads us to a question why confidence in culture matters so much to the party at this juncture. Throughout the 20th century, culture had been at the forefront of ideological struggle within China. With the reform and opening up experiments in China's rapid and expanded integration with the world, the party's grip on cultural production had dramatically loosened, but the securitization of China's cultural elements became a key concern as intellectuals across China debated issues of cultural sovereignty and cultural conflict. Wang Huning, who is described as the most powerful intellectual in China today, contended in his widely renowned essay, which was titled Cultural Expansionism and Cultural Sovereignty, that cultural conflict has superseded military and political conflicts as the greatest challenge to sovereignty. His primary concern was the threat to China's internal order posed by the expansion of Western political values. New left intellectuals such as Wang Hui and Cui Zhiyuan not only denounced neoliberalism and the onslaught of Western cultural beliefs into China, but also identified socialist culture as a matter of security. Responding to the worldwide debate unleashed by the publication of Samuel Huntington's essay, Clash of Civilizations, new Confucian scholars such as Chen Ming and Jiang Qing also called for a return to Confucianism, as they argued that after having spent the entire 20th century denouncing and destroying Confucianism, China no longer had a civilization of its own, and it was only through a renewed understanding of China's traditional culture and questions of its agency and identity in the 21st century can be addressed. And the reasons behind the echoing of such concerns was based on a confluence of several factors, which were both internal as well as external. Internally, it was fueled by the dead weight of several uncomfortable ideological questions waiting to be resolved from China's past, the glaring inequalities that resulted from the ceaseless pursuit of wealth. Externally, it was propelled by a sense of an impending crisis of American exceptionalism, which was followed by the collapse of the Soviet Union. When Xi Jinping assumed office in 2012, many intellectuals, especially of the New Left, believed that the party was characterized by the weakening of ideology, and the Chinese society was mired in economic avarice and moral decadence, which prompted him to forge ideological unity. Some even criticized the liberals for being too seduced by the siren of American culture and extolled Xi Jinping for understanding the danger and rise up to the occasion and save socialism, not just for China, but for the world. The leadership itself acknowledged that the situation of loose and lax governance and deviational tendencies of the reform era were responsible for eroding the party's control and prestige. The scholars, the Chinese scholars, they believed that this has relegated China to a status of a nation with a missing soul and a sagging spirit. And it was widely believed that ever since market reforms were unleashed in China, China's cultural construction lagged behind the economic and social development. In order to revive the soul and uplift the spirit of the nation, it is reiterated that the cultural construction and cultural confidence are very important. A lengthy Xinhua article published recently titled Xi Jinping, Man of Culture, attempts to paint a picture of the leader as both a savior of China's culture, who has cultivated confidence in culture in service of the nation's rejuvenation and established an impenetrable barrier against negative elements in Western culture. His stress on cultural confidence can also be interpreted as a rise of cultural conservatism and nationalism in the face of new ideological challenges posed by Western capitalism, globalization, neoliberalism, populism in China. As already mentioned earlier, the official terminology identifies two major historical sources of China's cultural self-confidence, namely excellent traditional Chinese culture and red culture. There are actually three sources, one of which is advanced socialist culture, which many scholars believe is an umbrella term which includes the other two sources, while some others believe that it refers to the cultural representations that do not fall within the scope of the other two. Since the focus of this paper is red culture, I will discuss a bit about the concept, origin, and its interpretations. The color red, as described in the Cihai dictionary in China, symbolizes revolution, communism, and firm belief in communist ideals. Globally linked to left politics, its roots trace back to the Hat Rouge of the French Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Red Army, and the Comintern. In China, red has represented the CPC since the 1921, retaining its symbolic value from Mao era to the Xi Jinping's new era. Despite bearing such strong political semblance, red is also an embodiment of a wide array of cultural representations in China. It is defined as the crystallization of the collective wisdom of China's communists, containing rich political wisdom and moral nourishment, which is the best nutrient to improve the party spirit, ideological state, and moral level of the majority of the party members and cadres. The concept varies in interpretation. Some scholars believe red culture refers to the cultural achievements that were nurtured and developed during China's revolutionary struggle. Some view it as a collection of revolutionary cultural artifacts, literature, and commemorative sites developed by the party over the history of 100 years. Some others see it as the collective strength, material and spiritual strength accumulated by the people during the historical evolution of the global communist movement. Some other emphasize its localized cultural resonance originating in the revolutionary bases like Qinkangshan, Yan'an, and Xipaipo, and then spreading across to nationwide after CPC's victory in the Civil War. Others associate it with the progressive cultural movement rooted in the new culture movement, which evolved through the which, as they claim, evolved through the Sinicization of modernization of Marxism, blending revolutionary and contemporary patriotism. So while the party claims that the concept has been developing for over a century, the formal proposal of this concept is relatively recent, a product of the 21st century spanning nearly 20 years. However, its origins and contents remain a subject of varied and often contradictory interpretations in China. According to Chi Changkun, a member of China's Red Culture Research Association, the concept of red resources was first introduced in 2003 and began appearing in some of the articles on Chushi, which is the theoretical journal of the party. However, the first emergence of this term in an official policy document may be traced to the National Red Tourism Development Plan of 2004. Which was used to trigger the local economy and address the issues of disparities in development of the rural and landlocked hinterland areas of the erstwhile crucial revolutionary bases. Consequently, topics such as the value forms of red culture, its moral functions, education functions, its the utilization of red resources, the development of red industry quickly entered the focus of leaders and scholars and the general public. Later, during Po Xilai's infamous Chongqing experiment, the scope and implications of the term were further explored. Between 2007 and 2013, Po Xilai, the party secretary of Chongqing at the time, and a strong critique of the neoliberal takeover of China, based his political branding upon his projection as a red descendant, having a direct flesh and blood relationship with the masses. By appealing to the nostalgia deeply rooted in the memories of the Maoist era and revolutionary ideals prevalent among a significant section of the Chinese populace, particularly those who recall the collective spirit and egalitarian ethos of the early communist period, Po launched the Singing Red, Smashing Black campaign, which sought to address discontent arising from social inequality and reconnecting citizens to the party's revolutionary heritage. But it actually was part of Po's broader effort to bolster his political profile and gain political support amidst shifting political currents in China. Initially lauded by many as a model offering a third way between capitalism and socialism, this campaign ended in a political disaster. Later, under Xi Jinping, who seemed to have engineered a long-term vision for China's future transformation, the grassroots revolutionary nostalgia has been effectively tapped into and co-opted by the party as part of its official narrative and memory. While Po's campaign was linked to personal ambition, Xi's red culture aligns with his mass-line ideology and the goal of ensuring the party's perennial rule. It is not only about personal branding, but more about legitimizing the party's central authority. This co-option ensures that revolutionary nostalgia serves not as a critique of the present, but as a reinforcement of the party's narrative and authority, which is why Xi Jinping has assumed an aura of self-confidence that emerges from his revolutionary
Can I ask you to wrap up,
roots.
Gargi?
Sure, ma'am. As a direct inheritor of the Red legacy, and he has borrowed terminology and imagery from the Marxist-Leninist and Maoist concepts of political communication. There's a consistent emphasis on the need to inherit the red gene, the good red genes, and passing them down from generation to generation. And it may also be vital to underscore that this nationwide campaign to study history that was promoted by the party around its centenary also coincided with the party's aim to promote the correct line of thinking. Wang Tingyu, who is a professor of Marxism at Renmin University, stated that the negative trend of historical nihilism, which is causing serious harm to Chinese society, can only be tackled and countered by red culture. And even some scholars have even suggested that the LGBTQ question in the sissy men culture that was discussed earlier, and even the lying flat phenomena, they are believed to be international conspiracies aimed to weaken the militaristic and entrepreneurial spirit of the youth of China by making them more effeminate and indolent, that can be countered by injecting in them the spirit of valor and sacrifice and hard work, which is rooted in red culture. But as the discourse is cluttered with many meanings, it is hard to discern what lies at the core of red culture, as varied perceptions, broad and vague explanations offer room for future policy adjustments amid deliberately kept ambiguity, as it can be gleaned from the already mentioned explanations of red culture. However, when juxtaposed with Mao's earlier proposition of the creation of the revolutionary culture of the masses, its sources, representations, and subjectivities, along with the Marxist cultural analysis, one may find key differences between the two concepts. In an article written by Wei Panchuan titled From Revolutionary Culture to Red Culture, he argues that while revolutionary culture and red culture are often used interchangeably, both within and outside China, they both carry key differences, as both these concepts have emerged in response to very different situations and contexts.
I hope you're concluding, Gargi.
Yes, ma'am, just another minute. His study further indicates that the deliberate attempt of replacing revolutionary culture of the masses with red culture also makes red culture subject to various interpretations. He contends that red culture finds a broader acceptance in the changed realities of the present than revolutionary culture, as it places more emphasis upon breaking the old and building anew, with breaking being prioritized before building. In contrast, red culture, as an evolved version of drawing upon the revolutionary spirit, only prioritizes building and has discarded the tendencies of breaking, unlike its predecessor. Red culture is more inclusive, as it does not take class struggle as the sole criteria for historical development. As a vital source, it draws spiritual nourishment from the revolutionary culture and flourishes alongside market consumerism, as the industrialization of red culture not only taps into the social and historical value, but also integrates it with the market, thus playing a social, political, historical, as well as a market function, while being accommodative to the current tri-party logic of economic growth, social stability, and political legitimacy. Despite its political rhetoric and propaganda, the revolutionary culture of the masses, which became the audiovisual backdrop of China until the reforms, attempted to imagine the working class as the Nongminkong subjectivity, by not only bringing the poorest and the most precarious population closer to mainstream culture, but also exalting the position of the proletariat as masters of the nation. In contrast, red culture, through its palimpsestic narrative and appropriation of formalistic socialist rhetoric, seeks to appear inclusive, but it does not offer any emancipatory possibilities to the downtrodden, but only exhorts them to appreciate that today's happiness, sense of access, security comes from the leadership of the Communist Party of China, thus reflecting the CPC's attempt to regulate culture to strictly attend to the correct values and the party line, rather than reflecting the aspirations and value orientations of those at the bottom line. So I will conclude my presentation.
Please, because you've taken close to 20 minutes.
Okay, so to conclude, while reinforcing the overriding melody of confidence in the cultural arena, the party has identified red culture as a vital source for its cultural confidence doctrine. Although red culture claims to draw spiritual nourishment from the origins in the revolutionary movement and seeks to build the core values of socialism in the new era that will guide China in attaining its national objectives as against the universal values represented by the West, it fails to distinguish between capitalist and socialist morality, unlike the revolutionary culture of the masses. Thank you.
Thank you, Gargi, for a very lengthy presentation, extensive. I thank all the panelists actually for very extensive presentations. Now, one thread that runs through the three presentations is the question of Chinese culture, Chinese value system. In other words, what is seen as Chinese-ness. So it definitely looks for characteristics that would set them apart, set the Chinese identity apart over and above the rest. So when it comes to the Chinese identity and culture, there is something that I wanted to sort of bring to the table, is that the Chinese word, which is often used for cultural legacy, yi chan, often used to signifies the culture is a heritage of the accumulated over centuries and generations and from the predecessors. Now, it's somewhat similar to the word Samskriti that we use in Indian languages as well. But the point is that I think the way Xi Jinping has tried to conceptualize culture, or has brought culture into the command of governance, and in trying to sort of use it for purposes of getting affiliations of all kinds into under one umbrella, is something which is somewhat new from what we have seen in the Mao Zedong. There are continuities, but there are definitely differences. Okay, so this is one point that I wanted to make. Second point, that why is there so much interest in culture? But that's not new. The CPC has always been interested in culture. It has tried to shape culture right from the very beginning. In fact, the very fact that it started to mobilize people by the means of culture is in trying to bring consciousness to people. You know, the new cultural formations that we see in the early years of CPC's journey through Long March and other things. So that's nothing new. But what is new is that from each phase to another, I think the leadership has tried to cater to the need of the hour, in the sense that when was it that politics was in command, how was the culture used? When the economy was in command, how was the culture used? So today, when the culture is in command, how is culture being used for the purposes of governance and legitimacy across, not within China, but across, you know, even beyond China? So the utilitarian role of culture that we have heard about in the Marxist discourse, I think Xi Jinping has taken it really well into the sense of going beyond the domestic politics and using you know, culture for various purposes, even beyond the borders of China. So again, this then brings us to the question that was discussed at length yesterday, this whole question of exceptionalism. So the culture is the point of exceptionalism that is being propagated, that has always been propagated, but it's being propagated as a tool of governance, as a tool of diplomacy, as a tool of asserting its identity in the world politics, right from, you know, when you see how China was competing for all the international awards in the cultural arena, whether it was cinema, whether it was theater, whether it was Nobel, you could actually see that how it felt that this has to be our arrival because we are different, we are better, and we are very, very exceptional, right? And then my next point that I wanted to leave it with all of you is that how is this exceptionalism different from this whole discourse of sinocentrism that, you know?
শোনো না
Hello? This is
হ্যাঁ
somebody. Kaustav, you need to mute yourself. Okay, so that question, as I was saying, that exceptionalism and how it is being taken for various purposes. Now, the other point that I wanted to make for, especially for the two papers that both of you, your papers are very, what should I say, aligned with each other in terms of thematics. But I think what you need to understand and define as to what Professor Chakravarti said yesterday, that what is the new era? I mean, you are calling it a new era. How is it different from the old era, if there was an old era? Secondly, you have taken us through the journey of, the historical journey of in the 20th century, how culture, experience of culture has been different from one phase to another in terms of how the policies on culture were being shaped without really linking it to that, to the socio-political, economic backdrop of that particular phase. That is something, I think, which is lacking, which needs to be done. Because if you're looking at emergence of a certain cultural formation or policies on culture in a particular phase, historically, it needs to be rooted, contextualized as to where does it emerge from, right? So these are the few points that I wanted to make. The one point that I want to make about Kaustav's paper is, you know, you are working in an area which you are creating a niche body of knowledge. So We are actually very happy that you're working in this area. Not many people are. I get the sense from reading your paper that you are expecting China to take Taiwan as an example and go the Taiwanese way in the question of LGBTQ+. But there is a dichotomy here, you call it contradiction, whatever, because what is Chinese-ness? We are forever talking about Chinese-ness. The Taiwanese sometimes do not think of themselves that they are part of that Chinese entity. They start talking in terms of Taiwanese-ness and distinguishing themselves from the mainland Chinese-ness. Now, whether it is only in terms of the present 20th century, the modern contemporary period of history, but otherwise also, I think they want to set themselves a little apart. So, and the discourse of how it posits itself vis-a-vis the mainland, whether it's in the issues of integration across the Taiwanese Strait, whether it's political, cultural, or any other kind of integration, there are various voices within Taiwan, and I think the issue from the Taiwanese side is not resolved. And the Chinese, I'm sure, are not thinking of themselves as to looking, especially having to integrate Taiwan, taking into consideration their differences. They are thinking of Taiwan as part of themselves, and that is about it. So, yeah, under that situation, I wonder why are you expecting, this is to Kaustav, that the mainland will actually take a leaf out of the Taiwan's experience. So, in the end, a few comments about the materials that have been used by the three papers are completely different from, two sets. Abhinav and Gargi's papers have used very in-depth primary sources, Chinese language sources, if I may use, because of their Chinese language. But I think you need to go beyond just the knowledge of the language and do a little bit of semiotic comparison of the speeches that you are talking about of a particular period, of a particular, how the expressions of Xi Jinping is different from Deng Xiaoping, definitely different from Deng Xiaoping, but how is it also different from Mao Zedong? What are the constituencies that he's addressing, and how he's articulating those constituencies? So that is one. So I think you also need to, what should I say? I get a sense of using too many of terminologies and jargons, and I'm not sure whether you have sorted them out in terms of where you are going with your main arguments. In the reverse, I think for Kaustav, I wanted to say that I see most of the materials that you have used are not Chinese language sources. You actually talked about data, and I understand that it must be very difficult for you to actually access sources from within China. And on these issues, I think the sources that you could be extremely helpful to you, Kaustav, would be the social media and how, and that is something which would require not only understanding of Chinese language, but culture, but the nuances, and all that has to be read between the two lines. I think I'll stop here. We are past time, but can you give us 5 minutes? 5 minutes for question and answers. Okay, how do I go? I will start with Shri, and then, what is your name, Swati? And then, Shagufta, you have to wait. You are an insider, outsider, okay? Vineet. So, Shri. Yeah.
Hello.
We'll take 3 questions in one go because there is no time.
Okay. My question is from Abhinav. How far, if any, do you think that Taoist philosophy of yin and yang reflect in current Chinese culture or core socialist values? The philosophy of combining the opposite or contradictory elements into a synthetic whole? And does it anywhere feature in the CCP's idea of socialism with Chinese characteristics?
My question is to Kaustav. So I happened to come across this book, Gender and Sexuality in Modern Chinese History by Susan Munn, which draws a linkage between sexuality, governance, and culture. So, and she says like throughout the history of China, sexuality has strongly been linked or attributed with government policies. So my question is, what could have been the reasons or government policies that explain a large number of enacts in the Royal Court of the Forbidden City? Thank you.
My question is, like, throughout these 2 days of the conference, we've been talking about Confucianism as the main cultural focal point of the Chinese focus. But why isn't China considering something like Taoism as part of it? So what role does that play in the cultural connotations in China? Oh, sorry, to Abhinav.
To answer the question that concerning the Confucianism, so in the process of research that not only the Confucius philosophies, but also monks, Mencius, also question about Taoist philosophy, and it is the sources which are recorded by the court historians, or as you go through the state and warring period, when before that it was autumn and spring period where there is harmony, and the harmony there related to the music, and through the music you establish relation with people to people relation, with community to community relation, and then you have a state and warring period where the 100 school of thoughts, they emerged and they contest with each other, and that provided the very rich foundational philosophical foundation when the the Qin Empire and followed by Han Empire. So they go back to these sources and they draw lessons from there, and they use to apply those in their policy. And regarding your yin and yang, it is there. When you go to China and when you have to buy, when you go to China and then you buy something, and
No, I think what she's asking about, is it part of the core socialist values? Is it integrated into that?
so far I haven't found that yin and yang concept is related to core socialist values.
Okay. So, Kaustav, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, please.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to respond Chair's observations. I never claimed in my paper that Taiwan should be the role model. I don't know about that. I never claimed, but the main point I try to argue is that all the countries are talking about feminist and inclusive foreign policies, and they're looking for that alternative. But China, instead, Xi Jinping is using homophobia as a political tool. So that is the main argument in my paper. Second questions regarding the Chinese, as I during my presentation I said I'm not an historian, and since my limitations about the language, so I have referred to the historian Sarah Prager, who writes that bisexuality was an accepted norm in the Han Dynasty. According to historical records, many emperors of the Western Han Dynasty were known of having both wives and male companions. So, as I said, I'm not much familiar, but they have different dynasty where alternative sexualities were accepted. They have eunuchs similar to the Mughal emperor. They have both, like bisexuality was lot of writings refer about bisexuality acceptance. That is maybe the connection with the CC man. The companions were those effeminate men basically in the society. So that is the connections. And as I said, I'm not an historian, so I don't know. Like I cannot claim to making the connection of Chinese code and whatever
No.
the questions you have mentioned. So yeah, thank
But
you.
you are working on very niche area, so maybe you should think
Thank
in
you.
terms of
Yes, yes,
investing in
yes.
the language so
I
that you can go into, you know. Okay. So
Yes, yes. I'll
I
plan to
yeah,
collaborate. Yes.
I think
I actually collected a lot of interviews from social media only in this paper, so I referred to the Chinese social media.
okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I think there is no time. Shall we call it a day? And I thank all the panelists for excellent presentations.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you to all the panelists. Now I would like to request Dr. Amrita just to kindly come on the dais so that we can present a token of gratitude to all the dignitaries. Let's give a huge round of applause. Now I would request the chair and the panelists to come on the front to have a family photo. Yeah, control room, can you please display him? I see. Okay. Thank you so much. We take a short 5 minutes break. Yeah, we can.
Check. Hello.
Please. Thank you. Thank you.